Okay, we are back.
We're 10 and 12 years old.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have this catch, and she sleeps 5 people. She has a gas stove and an ice refrigerator.
Wasn't a
and
gas
gray-
stove, it was
and
a shipmate coal
and a
stove.
gray marine engine. And Nick decides he doesn't like the gas stove,
Oh, okay.
which flared up once at Block Island and almost burned the boat down. So we do a big reconstruction, and it gets a shipmate stove, which is a coal stove, with a coal scuttle behind it. So here's the stove, and here's the hull of the boat coming down, and the coal scuttle fits behind that, and there's a little sliding door, and you can get coal out of it, and put it in the shipmate stove, and you fill it from the deck, and there's a big port on the deck that it's waterproof, and you can take it out and pour coal down it. And of course, we have all the coal in the world because of the August stove at home. And it gets a new ice chest, ice box, and the whole thing was soldered up in the workshop at home. And I can remember this tin, and Mother was helping, and she was holding something together, and Nick was soldering it, and solder began to drop on Mother, and she said, "You're burning me," and Nick says, "Don't move."
Really?
Yep, I can remember that very
Huh.
clearly.
Did she move?
No, she didn't move, she got burnt.
It's like when he was moving the generator and your finger got squished.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had a war surplus generator that would run the whole house.
yep.
Because the power used to go out all the time back then.
And Nick took such pleasure in having all the lights on in the house when nobody else had any power.
Oh dear.
The veterinarian up the street would send down all his
All his
medicine,
antibiotics.
antibiotics to
go
put
in
in the
the
freezer. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Povar.
Yeah.
Over.
Somebody was saying, probably you, that Povar had finally sold his practice and gone.
Peter, because they used
Yeah.
Povar.
His
Oh,
nephew
okay.
runs the practice, and he finally sold it to some national outfit, but he'll be there for a couple of years yet. So we, I remember we would, for vacation, take off and be in a different port every night with a different black and white movie every night.
Yep, yep, yep.
Block Island, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, Cuddy Hook,
Yep.
Woods Hole.
And our favorite weekend place was Dutch Island Harbor in Narragansett Bay,
Where Joe Harsh was.
where
Wow.
Joseph C. Harsh was.
Yeah.
And one year, our parents turned us loose with this big heavy catch. Billy,
I wasn't there.
you weren't there?
I wasn't there.
Well,
Ernie
Billy and
Bell.
I and Ernie Bell. Just the 3 of us, I guess. We sailed over to Menemsha Basin,
Yep.
which is on
Martha's Vineyard.
Martha's Vineyard,
Wow.
and spent a couple of days there. And I think Billy and Ernie Bell had girls while they were there. I
Oh,
certainly
we got
did.
in lust.
How
Deep
old
lust.
were you then?
Puberty.
don't think
we
we-
weren't 16.
No, we weren't
So your
16.
parents allowed you just to boat around New England?
Yeah, I can't believe it in hindsight.
When we were very little kids, our father took a couple of power products engines,
Yep.
Little gas engine.
little gas engines, and made go-karts. I don't know how fast they went, but we were just turned loose with these go-karts.
20 miles an hour.
At least
maybe?
20 miles an hour.
Wow.
Sure. The neighbors had a road that was sort of their road.
It's a
It
driveway.
was how long was it?
Quarter of a mile.
Quarter of a mile or more? And
Quarter of a
we
mile.
just ran up and down that road and
Going like hell.
going like hell. And then we were just little kids.
Every now and then we'd let the neighbor's kid take a turn in the go-kart so that they wouldn't get upset about us doing this.
I remember winding up with your front wheel in my lap.
Yeah.
You jigged when you should have jogged, and there I was with this wheel in my lap. I can't believe we survived.
And immediately after the war, Nick bought a Hillman Minx.
Oh, what a
God, what a
horrible
car.
car that was.
It was
John, this
green.
car's engine was so small that 2 people could just reach in the car and lift out the engine.
The
Oh.
battery was larger than the engine.
Wow.
Probably one person
I
could have
don't
done it.
think the battery.
Wow.
The battery was this big.
Oh, well, the
It was
engine
a
was
big,
about that
it
big.
was a
yeah.
big battery. And it had English directional indicators, which were flippers, that flipped out
Oh,
of the
I
pillar
thought they
between
were
the front and
wonderful.
rear doors.
We used to try and kill people with the flippers.
Yes. And we used to, for some reason, that became the kids' cars. I'm not quite sure how that happened.
Well, we used to
I
run
know,
that
Pop bought the Porsche, that's how that happened.
on that
Oh.
street that went up to Shad Factory Pond. Remember, with all the curves.
Yep.
You driving like hell, and me and Willie hiking out the window,
Yes, they'd hold the car down because we'd go around.
leaning
the
out the window on the curves.
Yes, like on a motorcycle, trying to hold it down.
God.
Yep.
If it ever rolled, it would have been instant death.
Oh.
Tom probably would have made it, but you
Oh,
and
I
I
would
would
have.
have.
You and I would have been gone.
I'd have been dead. The youngest always dies.
We had lots of adventures as children. Our parents were
Free spirits.
very different. And we didn't realize this. We thought everybody lived this way.
Do you remember when Pop made fulminated mercury on the stove?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And blew the kitchen door off its hinges.
Yeah. She said, "I'll show you what you can make with just stuff from the kitchen, boys." And he's cooking this up, and my mother came by and took a look. She says, "Oh, that's interesting. Children, come outside with me."
And he set it off with a feather. He just brushed it.
I thought he slammed the door.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. It was on some kind of filter paper, which in this case was an old kitchen towel.
Yeah.
And he taped it to the doorway, and we had to stand way over past the Yaga. And he slammed the door and blew the door right back into the kitchen.
Remember when Grandma gave us this stuff? It was in a plastic tube.
Oh, yes,
And
yes.
it was gook, and you put it on the end of a little straw, and you blew a plastic bubble. And Pop came by and said, "Oh no, isn't that interesting?"
Oh no.
And he got an old battery, and he had some acid. Hydrochloric acid?
Sulfuric
acid?
Yes.
Who the hell would have sulfuric acid hanging around?
No, it came out of the battery.
No, this was in a carbide.
No?
Yep.
Okay.
We had sulfuric and,
Zinc.
yes,
Got the zinc out of the battery, put the
Out
two
of,
together, made what? Hydrogen?
The
Hydrogen.
zinc came out of flashlight
Hydrogen.
batteries.
That's
Blew up the things, the little plastic
Made
bubbles,
hydrogen.
and off they went. We thought that was pretty good, so what we did was to
And
take
you
a
shot the bubble with an air rifle, and it blew up the hydrogen.
yeah, or took a ladyfinger and put it on a string and just touched the string to the balloon, and off it went.
we made lots of kites. And
Oh,
we
yeah.
would take, on the kite string, we would have another little teeny kite with a firecracker attached to it. And it would, the little kite would fly up the string, way up in the air, and it'd explode. Well, we thought that was a pretty good idea. And Nick, as part of a catch, had an emergency radio. It was a
Yeah.
World War II thing that a flyer would have.
The distress kit, yeah.
And it was a distress kit. And there was a hydrogen generator in it. You pour water into this thing, it would generate hydrogen. And you would fill a balloon, big balloon,
Run
big,
up an
about
antenna.
that big around. And that would lift
Carry
the
up your
antenna.
antenna.
Carry up the antenna. And then there was an emergency radio that you put between your knees and you turn the crank like this. And that would send out
Yeah.
a signal.
Automatically. Da 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 da.
And the
In
rescue
Morse.
people would come out and get you. Well, we had several of these balloons, and we sent one up on this long string, way up in the air, and then sent a little firecracker up to it, and the firecracker got to it, and it set the hydrogen off, and the echo could be heard for miles.
Oh yeah.
Almost immediately the telephone rang, and Bob Beatty, the neighbor, said, "I assume that was you, Nick." And Nick said, "Yep, that was me."
Do you remember the kite we sent up and then sent up a battery with a flashlight bulb wired to it?
Yes.
And we just left it there and it hung up there for a week.
And the flashlight going, "Pling."
And then there was a little, it was a windstorm or something and it just disappeared.
We used to send kites up with 5, 6 lengths of string on them, get them way up there.
Oh yeah.
That was fun. That
Wow.
was
Yes
a
it
lot of fun.
was. Yes it was.
Well, it's within living memory. You sent one up on the beach at Nantucket,
Oh yeah.
and the airport authority
right.
came
Yes.
by and told him to get it down, he was interfering with the flight
It was my
path.
kite, it was in the flight path.
Yeah,
Um,
you could have got the Kennedy kit.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
Oh,
then they would have known what happened.
Well, let's see.
do you remember making a telescope and grinding the lens?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Walking around and around that nail keg?
Yes.
Hours and hours of manipulating that lens
Yeah.
with
Different
valve grinding compound.
different grades of emery compound.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 And then the
Yeah.
monocular.
Where is that telescope?
I got it.
He's
You
got
it.
You want it?
No.
Nobody wants it.
Well, what am I
See,
gonna
nobody
do? with
wants it and I can't
I
give it
had
away.
it for a while.
Okay, I'll give it to Dana.
Give it to Jonathan.
Okay.
What would you do with it?
What
You
is
can
it?
watch the
It's a telescope.
Yeah,
It's
it's
huge.
got a
and
lens
it's
on
heavy.
it like this. It's maybe in its. Well, you can see all the moons on Jupiter and the rings on Saturn. Maybe it's
Yeah.
a couple hundred power.
Probably.
Once,
Yeah. You can watch the
I-
girl doing a strip dance in the top of the John Hancock building.
we had Pop got a microscope somewhere, so we all looked at things through the microscope. And we got this little swamp creature, and it looks like a wheel. And Pop told us,
Rotifer.
that's a
Rotifer
rotifer
vulgaris.
vulgaris, and it looks like a wheel, but it's not. They used to think that it was a wheel in nature.
The
So
only
he-
example of rotary motion in nature.
So he made a stroboscope.
Yep.
You remember a little black disc with a hole
I've
in
got
it?
that
Went
disc.
like that.
I've got it.
So it would stop the rotifer, and you could see it.
And you can see they were just hairs.
And we went up to the Boston Museum of Science, where they had a, what do they call it, a harmonograph? It was a big tin, and you fill it with sand, and you hold it over this dot, and you let it
Oh,
go,
yes,
and
yes,
it made
yes.
a pattern.
Yes,
They still have that.
So we thought that was pretty good, so Pop made us one with not
Oh.
one, but two pendulums.
That's right.
It's what they use to make the curlicues on dollar bills, so they can't be forged.
Because each one's a tiny bit smaller.
And he wanted to demonstrate to us why water flows right-handed in this hemisphere and left-handed in the other hemisphere when it goes out of a drain.
That's
So-
not true.
Yes,
it is
it
true.
is.
Yes, it is true.
All right.
So we got a tub of water and put it in the basement because it has to be still water. And it was still water, and a little bit of coal dust was sprinkled on the top of it. And we had a way of unplugging the bottom of it, and sure enough, it went in the right-handed direction. And when I was in New Zealand, I had to see if it would go in the left-handed direction. And
In the
it does.
airport, he runs for the men's room to see
And it
which
does.
way it goes.
And I got everybody excited about it. Oh, yeah. I got 6 or 7 people watching.
I'm gonna put a stop on this.
It's a good time to do that.
Z.